Welcome back, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. So super happy to welcome back a previous guest from way back on episode 30. Crazy to believe for me, that was over 200 episodes ago. And if you spent any time in digital marketing or MarTech, then you'll definitely recognize the name. Neil Patel is the well-known digital marketer and influencer who Forbes calls one of the top 10 marketers. He's a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and the founder of Crazy Egg, Hello Bar, KISSmetrics, and Neil Patel Digital. He was also recognized as a top 100 entrepreneur under the age of 30 by former President Obama and a top 100 entrepreneur under the age of 35 by the United Nations. And on this episode, we'll discuss paid search, social media, influencer marketing and followers, content, being a new dad, COVID-19, and a lot more. So let's tune in to the legendary Neil speak with a legendary shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Well, Neil, thank you so much for joining us again on A Shark's Perspective. It's been a bit, roughly for me, 200 plus episodes ago since you were on the show. Could you please describe how much your life has changed since episode 30? Or do you even remember it at all?
So because of COVID-19, my life really changed a lot, and more so at home all the time with family. Business isn't as good, of course, because the economy is just not as good. But, all you can hope for is people get better, less people die. And business is a side effect. Sure, I would like business to get better, but I'd rather have people not getting sick and living longer. So.
Agreed. Well, let's dive into sort of the topic, business as it is today, especially with paid search. So you and I live a lot in the digital performance marketing world, and I remind people all the time to take advantage if they can from a budget standpoint, that protects their employees and level of service to their customers, that it's more important than ever to really be present in paid search when someone is searching for your brand, by term or for a particular service, even if it's non-branded. Clicks are generally a lot cheaper today than it was before, with so much more inventory and a lot less competitors in the market. What are your thoughts on paid search during this sort of asterisk of a year?
I think paid search is so much cheaper because of COVID. There's so much opportunities in it. It's now becoming much more affordable. I don't think that's going to last forever. We're already seeing the cost per click to go up. But if you can spend $1 and make $2, $3, $4 and it's profitable, you should do it all day long.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Google's ad revenue, their decline is, fallen off a cliff for the first half of the year. And they're attributing it primarily, at least from what I believe and what I've heard, is the loss of significant travel ad spending in paid search. Yet still, Facebook and Amazon ad revenues are are continuing to grow, not at the anticipated pace they were earlier, but it's still growing. I'm curious, how much of this do you think could be I'm going to call it sort of a permanent-ish change versus just a temporary COVID-19 where we're trapped in at-home type change? And I don't necessarily mean with travel revenue, but the reason I ask that way is that I'm curious to your thoughts on how much of consumer habits have changed as a pivot versus a permanent change to the way people respond on digital ads on those channels.
Yeah, so I think it's not going to be a permanent change. I think it's going to be much better within 3-4 months. Whether their COVID kicks back up again or not. And the reason being is people are getting tired. I have some friends who went on flights and they're just like, there's so many more people on the flights. Sure, there's less routes happening each day. That allows the airlines to operate more profitably, although they're still probably losing money because less planes, you can fill up more passengers per plane. Heck, I even had someone tell me, the airlines were saying that they were going to give the middle seat, leave it empty. And they were on a flight with a middle seat that was full, and almost all the middle seats were full. The point I'm trying to make is it'll end up coming back. You're seeing companies like Eventbrite, their CEO saying that they're seeing signs of recovery. People that go to events, they travel to go to these events. So I think all of this is temporary, and you're going to see travel and everything go back. If you look at Airbnb, they went from saying that, hey, we're raising a lot of money, things are bad, to hey, we're now considering going public in 2020. Well, when they weren't considering that before, right, because of COVID.
Good point. So one of the issues Rand Fishkin, I know when he and I were last speaking at physical events, and I know he's been talking about it over the last year frequently, is clickless searches. And I've seen this happen a lot where people are putting out ads and people are not clicking on them. As you know, they'll go search for it directly. But are you seeing the same thing? Are you going about some sort of remedy for what you do and for how marketers should really approach how to position themselves in lieu of what's basically becoming well, maybe not a clickless search world, but obviously we've seen a change in the way those ads have really performed.
Yeah, a lot of the times when people don't click, it's for queries that in many cases didn't drive revenue, like what is the weather in Los Angeles, California?
Mm-hmm.
Or what's 2 plus 2? Someone looking for answers. It wasn't necessarily commerce related terms. So I wouldn't look at more so how many clicks are going to results versus not. Sure, they're taking some away, but at the same time, the percentage of people using Google is going up. More people are going online, more people are searching. And also on top of that, we haven't seen a decline in money-based keywords. What I mean by that is like people looking for services. We're still seeing them click through heavily. We're still seeing people click through heavily for people who are interested in buying products like e-commerce. Where we're seeing less clicks is people just looking up and researching.
Mm-hmm.
Many cases, those people looking at researching, they're not buying anything. Sure, you're losing a little bit of ad revenue if your site's filled with banner ads, but in general, the majority of the web that makes money is not from that. It's mainly from it's mainly coming from things like commerce, right? Like the amount of money that's being spent on commerce is ridiculously high, and it's just going up. Only roughly 12% of online commerce is done online. So just think about how much more is going to move toward online in the next 3, 4, or 5 years.
Oh, agree. So how are you looking at content today, especially as it plays a part with paid search? Or what kind of advice are you giving to optimize your content so that it performs well with optimizing your paid search type traffic or paid social as well?
So what we're doing on the paid is we're not optimizing paid to help the organic or anything like that. We are optimizing paid by giving content first. And here's what I mean by that. There was a case study that Google did with Olay, the skincare company,
Mm-hmm.
and Olay was bidding on the term remove dark circles under eyes, right? And what they would do is they would just drive you to a landing page that had a product that showed a product that you can buy. Olay ended up changing that campaign to an article that taught you, how to get rid of dark circles under eyes and what causes them. And they broke down the information. They broke down how to get rid of them. And they also said, oh, by the way, you can use our product to do that. Their cost per clicks went down. Their quality score went up. Their conversion rates went up. So I look at paid and organic as very similar, in which, yes, one you pay, one you get free. But I look at it as how can you educate, and sell within the education.
Such a great point. So, post COVID-19 recession, with what we're going to emerge out of, a lot of businesses will continue to struggle with, flat revenue or just not what they wanted to get to. What are some of the most important things you'll be guiding your clients on as either a new or renewed focus as we come out of this, especially when many of them may not be doubling down on their marketing budget, where a lot of them will necessarily pull back, whether it's with people or it's with ad spend or anything else. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on, what's the recipe you think we'll be using to emerge out of this with marketing and advertising?
Honestly, I don't think the recipe's changed from when we were pre-COVID. The only difference is user patterns, and I think it's temporary. Whether temporary means 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, I actually think it's going to be the exact same way that it was pre-COVID.
I'm so glad you said that.
And we're seeing the same thing already right now. We're already seeing a recovery. The tactics that worked pre-COVID are working right now. There's not much of a difference.
I'm so glad you said that because I think the same way, and I just wish more people would say it as well. So how are you looking at all the channels today? I guess moreover, how are you thinking about an omni-channel approach versus what you would have necessarily thought about a few years ago? How much of that is sort of marrying a lot of the tactics across a lot of the paid media channels with organic channels and social posts as well?
Everything is the same. We're not seeing any difference in how we do omni-channel, how we're marrying things. Like literally nothing has changed for us. The tactics are still the tactics, the strategies are still the strategies. The only real difference is cost to do paid advertising is just way cheaper. Although it's not as cheap as it was compared to a few months ago, but it's climbing back up in its costs.
Hmm. Well, you and I share a love for optimization, something I think not enough marketers spend time on every day. And I'm always curious because I hear you talk about this a lot. Why do you think that's not a focus enough for optimization?
Uh, See, for some reason, I don't know why people don't care for optimization. Maybe they don't have enough traffic as a volume. I think that's one big portion. Two, optimization is like it's a numbers game. You got to do a lot of experiments. Most don't work.
Yeah.
Some will work. Most don't hit big. And the ones that do work, it gives you little incremental gains, and you have to do a ton of them to make it work. Like it's so tedious. It's so experimental. It's so hit or miss. It can be demoralizing, right? Because you're just like, man, this sucks. I did all these experiments, none work. And I look at optimization as it's like it's not sexy because of that. Versus like, oh, it's easier to spend $1 and just get some clicks to your website, right? Like you're guaranteed to get clicks. You may not get sales, but you're guaranteed to get clicks. You do some optimization or tests, you're not guaranteed on anything. You're usually guaranteed that it's most likely going to fail.
Well, that kind of brought me down. That was a very good way of explaining it. I haven't really I look at it a little bit more as maintenance, but no, that's such a smart way to think about it because it people also get so married to the bright shiny objects of the other channels so often. So, I've heard you speak before about influencers as well, and a lot of advice is being given about followers and follower count. What I'd like to know what the advice is you would give to grow influencer following today. I've heard you speak about this on a few of your own shows. Are you going to be moving a lot of your content to TikTok and doing shuffle dance tutorials? Are you, what are the social channels for growing your following that really interest you today and how to do it?
Sure. The social channels, the followings for me is Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, same old ones. TikTok is amazing and great, but it's still new and up and coming, has a chance of being really big, but my core demographic's not on there yet. Uh, the same tactics that worked before. It's test out different content, see what works. Don't keep doing the same things over and over again because it gets stale. You got to end up going out there and just providing a ton of value and more than anyone else if you really want to do well. Because if you don't provide enough value, they're going to go to someone else's profile who is.
But you brought this up on one of your shows. You were talking about how people were growing Instagram followers with groups, and I can't remember what it was that you talked about. Does that ring a bell at all?
Like the way I look at growing Instagram followers is there's a few things that I've seen that work really well right now. One is you go live,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
Two is you do cross promotions with other influencers. So I'll post your post, you post my post from your wall,
Mm-hmm.
and then people follow you. The other thing that I love doing, like, how we're doing this podcast interview over Skype? I found this actually to be the number one growth hack is I'll go with other influencers and we'll go live together and interview each other. And you'll be shocked on how many their followers will follow me and my followers will follow them. It's actually one of the best ways I've seen to grow my follower account on Instagram. Instagram also loves comments, so try to encourage comments,
Yeah.
and then you go from there. So
No, sounds good. So I asked you one time, I guess last show, I asked you once before about one of your goals being to share what you've learned with others. It's also made you just a phenomenal go-to resource for a lot of marketing and digital advertising professionals looking to learn. What do you attribute to the success of your own podcast show? I mean, you guys are what, a million plus per month on downloads? I mean, that's a pretty significant click, and you guys have done you worked with multiple hosts. What do you sort of attribute to the success of the show?
consistency,
Really?
consistency, trying to put out. I think it's decent content. I would say it's good, but I don't want to be arrogant. Um, Putting out consistent, decent quality, if not good quality content.
No, it's fantastic content and it's short content. That's one of the things I love about your show. Whereas I'll go, 30 minutes to an hour deep with somebody. A lot of times I often wish I was just doing a, 5-minute show. And it reminds me every time I listen to your show about how Walmart's, you know, optimize their site by increasing page speeds all the time. So I love it. It's just a consistent reminder for me when I listen to it. So last question. So being a dad, I also asked you about something I heard you talk about previously. with you spending time with your dad. Now you're a dad. So being a dad and being an entrepreneur is not one of the easiest things to be, especially being an agency owner during a pandemic. How are you doing with the work dad balance?
I'm doing pretty good. It is a bit tougher. For example, during this interview, my daughter's running around and screaming, and you may have heard her a few times. And she wants stuff, and this is like, okay, I got to do this. It's like harder to focus. That's been the hardest part, in which you got your child, you love him to death. Saying no is always hard, and you have to say no. And it's also, how do you prioritize, right? Like, I got to work as well and pay the bills, but at the same time, I got to try to give attention. I think COVID made it harder than anything else because there's no separation. Everything's in the same household. It doesn't matter if you close the door. They'll try to open up the door and come right on in. They don't care.
No. She's how old now?
She's one.
One. Wow. Well, just wait and see. So, Neil, I didn't get to ask you this back on episode 30, but I asked this question of all my guests on a shark's perspective because my nickname's Shark, and I love to know, what is your favorite kind of shark and why?
My favorite kind of shark is the one that goes out there and hunts and tries to kill and gets to eat whatever they want to eat. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's a dog-eat-dog world in business. If you're not out there and you're not aggressive, you're going to get stomped on and crushed by your competitors.
Damn right. So, well, Neil, it's that special time in my show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
I'm ready.
All right. Number 1, Mad Men or Silicon Valley?
Mad Men.
I hear your co-host bring up Silicon Valley all the time, so I just wondered. Number 2, a question on where you, Neil Patel, would go to get marketing advice. Gary Vaynerchuk or Damon John from Shark Tank?
Gary Vaynerchuk.
Why so?
It's easier to follow his formula if you're average Joe. I'm not saying Damon's not good. I'm just saying Gary's model on social media, most people are on, and he teaches you how to just bust out your phone, produce consistent content, and get views.
Good point. Number 3, paid search or paid social?
Both. Whatever is cash flow positive, I spend as much as possible. I'll be paid anything as long as it's profitable and ethical.
Good man. Number 4, and you just recently moved there from the other, Los Angeles or Las Vegas?
Los Angeles. I'm tired of scorpions in my house.
No, too funny. Number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Biscuits.
All right.
I was born in London.
You were born in London. Okay. Good man. So, Neil,
Biscuits.
well, where should people go out to find out more about you, keep up with the podcast, what you're doing, the virtual events and the live events, and more?
NeilPatel.com. You can also learn about my ad agency at neilpateldigital.com.
Neil, thank you again so much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Thank you for having me.
So there was my conversation with Neil Patel, the well-known digital marketer and influencer who Forbes calls one of the top 10 marketers. He's a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and the founder of Crazy Egg, Hello Bar, KISSmetrics, and Neil Patel Digital. He was also recognized as a top 100 entrepreneur under the age of 30 by President Obama and a top 100 entrepreneur under the age of 35 by the United Nations. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, so this is not a blanket answer or approach by any means, but if you have the money to take care of your employees, keep excellent service to your customers, keep the lights on, etc., then paid search is well worth the spend. Clicks have been down because of COVID-19, and a lot of your competitors have pulled out of the market. And again, when I say blanket approach, that also means you need to look at the messaging in your ads. But take advantage of being front and center if you know that your customers are searching for a product or service. If they're searching for something, especially in what is a down market, then understand that their intent to purchase may be higher depending on the use case. They're still likely doing research, but it depends on the use case. You still should work on creating amazing content that ranks, but paid search still continues to perform well and drive growth for a lot of brands, or Google and Bing be out of business, and of course they're not. Second, clickless searches are still a problem. People spray and pray bad keywords that don't convert. So many people try to grab every word possible, but are those costs all bad? Well, it depends. What you really need to continue to do is focus on, as he calls, Focus on those money-based keywords that perform well, and then make the determination if they drove intent, interest, or any other related traffic through some other source or channel rather than just that immediate click. Wasting money is bad, but just make sure you judge correctly the cost of an impression and don't demonize it for the wrong reason. Third, while optimization isn't sexy, the incremental adds up. It doesn't shine with metrics like a lot of channels do, but again, the long-term incremental adds up on optimization. Spend time on optimization rather than just the bright, shiny objects. Help make those incremental changes to help people find you, but also help them convert as well. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. I'm bullish on our future. How about you? So join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.